on the NewsChannel 5 network. This is Inside Politics.
Hello, everyone. I'm NewsChannel 5's political analyst, Pat Nolan. Welcome to Inside Politics. This week, we conclude our series of interviews with the men and women who want to be our next governor. Our final guest and gubernatorial candidate is Congressman Diane Black. She's on the ballot on the August 2nd Republican primary. Congressman Black, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. It's good to be with you.
We've got all our interviews with the gubernatorial candidates with some of the same questions. The first question is perhaps the most simple one, but perhaps the most profound. Why are you running for governor?
I'm running for governor because I believe that the time is right for me to come back to Tennessee and to serve our state in a different capacity than what I have in the past. And I think I'm uniquely qualified to serve as the next governor of this great state.
As you've gone across the state and campaigned, what are the three most important issues you're hearing from voters?
Number one is opioids. And I don't think it surprises any of us because we probably all either have someone in our family or close to us or even in our church that we've heard that have had to deal with this. It truly is an epidemic across our state. It is one that has to be addressed. Second is the rural areas. 60% of our state, some people are surprised when I say that, 60% of our state is rural, and we want to keep that rural culture. There are some things that need to be done to help make that happen. And then the third is education, and how we look at education today and how we've looked at it even just in the past maybe 8 years is a little different, and wanting to make sure that we are addressing the needs of our workforce.
You mentioned the opioids. Governor Haslam and the legislature recently put together a bill that's been signed into law that tightens the amount of opioid prescriptions people can get when they go to the pharmacy. Is that a good law? Is that a good first step? Does more need to be done to tighten the supply?
Yes, I believe it is a first step, and what I want to do is make sure that I'm working with, first of all, healthcare providers to make sure that we're not having someone be overburdened by having to go and get their prescription renewed. For instance, those with chronic pain, those who might be within months of their death, that they need to have that medication and not have to continue to go back. But I think there are other things that can be done with law enforcement and also with prevention.
There was $30 million put in along with those regulations that was going to be spent to deal with treatment and other things. That wouldn't seem to be nearly enough with the kind of epidemic we have.
Yeah, and we'll have to see about how that will work. Of course, he put the $30 million in there. We'll see how that is dispersed out into the community, especially for recovery. And that's the area where it's going to be very costly because as we thought in the past, maybe a couple of weeks in a recovery center was thought to be ideal. But we're seeing that that's not true, that people are coming out and relapsing time after time after time. As a matter of fact, some of the numbers say up to 7 times before somebody has full recovery. So it does take a longer period of time, which costs more.
If you become governor, is that the first area you'll try to deal with legislation or with executive orders?
Well, the first thing I will do is listen to what the healthcare providers are saying, especially in the recovery area, about what they're showing statistically as the ideal time, and I want to hear from them. I want to work with the medical community and make sure that we are preventing people from getting too many and making sure they get the education that they need. You know, I've had folks say to me, well, the doctor gave me 60 pills, so I had to take them all. I said, no, that's antibiotics. That's not pain medicine. So working with the healthcare community and then also law enforcement too, Pat, we've got to put them as part of the equation.
Do you think Governor Haslam's been a good governor? He's of your party. The programs and policies he's put in place, would you keep all of them going, or are there some you might change or even get rid of?
I think that the governor has done a good job, especially in education, bringing us from the bottom of the pack to the middle of the pack. There's still work to be done to bring us to the top of the pack. But as far as commissioners go, I think it's typical that you look at commissioners and say perhaps there are some that will be retained and some that you'll want to bring in some new people and some new ideas.
You mentioned education. One of the programs that gets a lot of controversy is the 10 Ready program, the testing program. It hasn't seemed to be able to be, people can't get it right quite yet to get it tested. Is it time to just get rid of the program, stop the testing, or just change the provider?
I don't think that we stop the testing. We still do need to have achievement scores to make sure that we know where students are. I do happen to think that we do a bit much testing. I've been talking to teachers and they are giving me information to say, look, they can't teach and kids can't learn if all you're doing is throwing tests in front of them. But the Tennessee Ready program really needs to be evaluated. In my opinion, what I know right now, and I'm not looking at all of the numbers, if it hasn't worked in 4 years, then that's not the organization organization that I want to contract with. I'm going to look for new people.
Are you concerned that despite the problems, it doesn't appear like they may not be able to get all the changes made in time for the next round, and we'll have more problems?
Well, I am concerned, and until I dig deeply into it, I don't want to make any definitive remarks, because it does take looking at something more deeply than just what you're hearing in the news media, and I've not had the opportunity to do that.
You mentioned a good bit of the state being rural, but agriculture still remains the #1 industry in the state, yet I don't hear a lot of talk about that on the campaign trail.
Yeah, well, agriculture is important, and I have 50% of my district is agriculture, so I have 19 counties, and I'm working with my farmers all of the time. A number of those provisions that are important to our farmers do come at the federal level, so like the Waters of the United States, we were able to overturn that this past year, something that came in the previous administration. It was so onerous on our farmers. We recently passed a farm bill, which really does help our farmers with certainty. And so some of that comes from the federal level, but also, you know, the state level is involved in making sure that our farmers have what they need, and that we're not impacting their ability to be able to grow crops, sell crops, and trade crops.
One of the Democratic candidates talks about the forgotten Tennessee. Is agriculture part of the forgotten Tennessee?
I think that we don't always recognize where our food comes from. That when we go to the grocery store, one of my grandsons actually said that he wanted the kind of green beans you get that grow in a can. And so I had to laugh. I said, you know, this is when kids have not been on a farm or watched and seen how a garden actually grows.
Under Governor Haslam, the state has enjoyed for some months now a record unemployment, but I don't hear the candidates talking about it. I don't hear him getting a lot of credit for that. Is there something wrong about the kind of unemployment we have that isn't what the state needs? It just seems to be a disconnect there someplace.
Well, we're seeing unemployment, we're seeing the unemployment go down. We're seeing that the economy is growing. Even we just had the anniversary of the 6 months of the Tax Cuts Jobs Act, and we know now that there are more jobs out there than there are people to fill them. One of the things that I think a lot of folks don't know, or I didn't even know until actually I went to Congress and understood the difference between unemployment and the workforce participation rate, and that is the number of people that are able-bodied that are sitting out of the workforce. And we still have about a third of those people. Now, some of those are folks that are getting older, that are aging out, or getting into retirement, but we do have a number of people that are able-bodied people that are not working, and we need to get everybody in the workforce. We need them.
Congressman Diane Black's our guest. She's a candidate for governor in the Republican primary on August 2nd. Back to continue our conversation with her after you watch these messages.